Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode.
We're in the EV world right now. There's so many cars coming aboard. There's so much opportunity. I think I still would have been okay in the vacation industry, but not in multifamily and not in hospitality, say the hotel side. I needed what they had already accomplished at that point to accomplish what I was envisioning. And fortunately, majority of our vision was aligned and pretty good guys too. I'm sure you're like me. You got to have integrity first. If that's not there, then forget it.
You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. What's up, Slick Talkers? Welcome back to another episode. And as usual, but with a little bit of a twist, I want to say one thing before we jump in, and that is one, Merry Christmas. And I hope you all had a good time with your family. And two is Happy New Year. I can't wait to see what's in store for 2023 with myself, the businesses, and of course the podcast, but also with what's going on in your lives. I've gotten to know so many of you over the last 2 years. And it's just been super incredible to really connect and form a community around the show. So thank you. And speaking of 2 years, is officially December 27th, the day after publishing this episode, been 2 years since I quit my day job as a hotel manager to take on the podcast and my vacation rental management company full time. So holy cow, what a 2 years it's been. But I couldn't be more thankful for everything you guys have done to get me to this point. From a podcast to two podcasts to now a network of podcasts. It's been an incredible 2 years. Another group of people that have really made this 2 years possible have been our podcast sponsors. And if you listen to the show once before, you've heard their name once or twice, if not multiple times. And so a big shout out and thank you to Hostfully, who has been with me for pretty much the full 2 years, for really believing in the message and the podcast in itself and in me. And then we added Safely not too long after that, and Minute this year. These three have really made the podcast amazingly possible, and I couldn't be more thankful to these companies because not only do I use them in my property management company, but I've actually gotten to know the teams behind the scene and just know they're incredible people. So check out all the special offers in the show notes below, and let's get back to the episode with Eric Broughton from OK2Charge. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. And I am brought to you by a legend today because Eric Broughton, who is the CEO of OK2Charge, has joined me. And Eric, my man, I'm so excited to have you on the show because we connected pretty quickly in Vegas. And thankfully to Lino and to Travis Wilburn for making that introduction. But just want to say
Yeah.
welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Any intro from those two guys, we're probably likely to become quick friends. So absolutely.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And they were definitely hyping you up, but the hype does not disappoint because getting to chat with you and hear more about your background and to read more about you and what you've done in the past is pretty impressive. And I want to dive into your story today for all the listeners because obviously we'll touch on OK2Charge and what you guys are doing for the vacation rental industry right now. But I think your pathway here is super important and it showcases like the entrepreneurial spirit that everyone in this industry has. And so I'll let you kick it off. Like, where does this all begin for you in your professional career? Um, I have tons of questions for you, so I'll let you kind of start off the introduction and then kind of ease into it there.
Yeah, right. So first off, yeah, Eric Broughton, CEO of OK2Charge, EV charging platform. We don't have to talk about that too much, but yeah, as far as my background, I mean, it probably goes back all the way to me living on a farm growing up, and it was just get work done. I was on a panel a couple weeks ago, and someone said, well, how do when you're stuck in a situation, how do you just push through? And it's kind of one of those epiphanies. I thought, well, I grew up in this farm, and I have to do this job, and my dad says, do this work, clean out this pen, shovel this manure and do all this work. And there's no one to turn to and go and complain or cry or anything else. You just got to get that work done before you can come in the house and have dinner and hang out and watch Dukes of Hazzard or something, So
Yeah.
you have to get after it. And I think that's just been a mindset ever since I've been a small, probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Just get after it, take care of things that need to be taken care of, and then you can have some fun. And that's kind of the way I look at things.
I love it. And I don't tell this story often, but that was actually not one of my first jobs. My first job was Little Caesars. I was a sign flipper on the side of the street. Like I would be
Nice.
dancing along with my sign.
That
But
takes
before
skill.
I like, oh, it was fun. You just put on some Michael Jackson or whatever, and you just pop out. Um, but one of my first jobs, like before, like I got into my adult life, was I was making $100 a week shoveling horse crap out of horse stalls. So
Oh,
I,
there
uh,
we go.
I, I get that struggle of like, all right, there's no one else here to do it. You just got to get it done.
That's
Um,
the thing.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I love. So how does that apply to your life getting into your career? Because you have an extensive
Yeah.
career,
Mhm.
getting multiple companies from startup mode to IPO
Right.
to your last position before taking over this OK2Charge. You
Mhm.
were with Inhabit IQ. So kind of walk us through the beginning phases of your career, kind of leading up into today.
Yeah, it was, I'm an electrical engineer by schooling, one of these degrees say that, and then, went to work in a steel mill in Kingman, Arizona, and it's always about I've always chosen the path of kinda most entrepreneurial, the latest and greatest technology, so I had the opportunity to go work for Boeing or for,
Mhm.
Northrop Grumman or some of these large chip IBM or different companies, electrical engineer, but I chose a steel mill because it was the first steel mill built in the United States in about 20 years, and it was built in 1995, and it had all this great technology. So I went in there as a plant engineer and really helping them manage different processes. In about 3 months, I became a shift manager. I'm managing, these grizzly 50-year-old, steel workers, and I'm this 25-year-old kid. Fortunately, I just got them playing football, so I was in pretty good shape, so I can go around toe to toe with them. But then I got the work done, and I was able to figure out how to work with their IT systems to reduce their changeover from
Mhm.
about 15 minutes from switching from rebar to rebar to about 3 minutes by using software systems. Like, this is great.
Dang.
Yeah, it saved the company a ton of money. And they said, well, do you want to run the IT department? I thought, well, that sounds a lot better than, getting steel dust on my face, wearing
Yeah.
gloves and everything. So I get to sit in the desk all day. So I started writing code. And I became really an entrepreneur first, I think, which is an important
Mhm.
thing for a lot of people to think about. And when I mentor
Can you
individuals.
can you explain that a little bit, or what that is, what an entrepreneur is instead of an entrepreneur?
Yeah, yeah, it's being an employee of a company and taking a step back and saying, what can I do that's going to influence this business in a positive way?
Mhm.
But first, you have to understand how the business makes money, where the opportunities are, and you have to do it within the confines of the business. You just can't wake up and say, I'm going to do a new business line. And what I was
Mhm.
able to do was network within. It was Cargill Steel. The company was North Star Steel, but this big. It was the largest private company in the world at the time, and
Mhm.
they also had an energy trading division. Met some guys, and when I was running the IT systems, I learned that Enron was a big issue. This is the late 99, 98, 99, and figured out that when our electric arc furnace plant went down, we basically had lightning in a bottle. So we're melting steel, really scrap metal down, and you have about 25,000 homes using this much electricity
Mhm.
in Arizona. And I figured out whenever the mill went down, we could sell that electricity. So I'd send a note to Cargill Corporate to sell the electricity in the open market. We made more money selling electricity than making steel in a couple months. And that's
Jeez.
where, I was like, wow, got some write ups in these magazines and things. That was pretty exciting. But that's it kind of stuck at, hey, I can create some meaningful value here by just thinking outside the box.
Well, I wanna ask you a question then
Yeah.
because, there was this podcast, I don't think it's still around today, but I used to listen to it. It's called Born or Made. And I want to know, do you feel like entrepreneurs are born the way they are and naturally born entrepreneurial, or are they
Mm.
made through something like going through an experience at a job where it's like you see a gap in your business that you're already being employed by, to then kind of fulfill that? Do you feel like you were born or made to do it?
I was probably in consulting too long, so I'm gonna say it varies. There's a matrix of born and made. I'm gonna say, you can be born an entrepreneur because you're a born competitor and
Mm,
you want to win and you don't like anyone else managing you and bossing you around. That's like a born
yeah.
entrepreneur. And there's the made entrepreneur. And I put myself more in the made camp in that you're born a certain way, but as you look around, you say, I want that, or I can achieve
Mhm.
that. And then you're one thing I am is constantly curious. And I would say that I was born curious, but I've become an entrepreneur. I could have easily become a scientist or an engineer and stuck in that field. But an entrepreneur, you're more made
Mhm.
because you keep on seeing different things and you grasp onto them.
No, I love
So
that, and it's really interesting because I have some people that, they completely say like, "Oh, I was made to be an entrepreneur, like, this was what I
yeah,
was born to do," or yeah, not made, sorry, I was born to be an entrepreneur, like, this was my
yeah,
life from the get-go. I was 7 years old selling candy at my school, like, like, whatever, to
right,
then, like, some people are, like, kinda like you, like, I had a traditional path, whether it was college and developing a career or whatever, just had and also had that instilled, like, work ethic in the beginning, when you're shoveling horse manure or cow manure or whatever, like, yeah,
right,
that's kind of that kind of gets instilled into you, right? Um,
right.
and then you see like this gap in opportunity where it's like, I think the curiosity, like you just said, is really important
Mhm,
because
yeah,
I think when you stop becoming curious as a business owner or leader, that's kind
mhm,
of when it starts to kind of fade out and go away. But
right.
yeah, yeah.
And your exposure as well. What are
Mhm,
you exposed to? Myself growing up, I thought the most important person in the world, and my world. I grew up in South Dakota. The plant manager. Boy,
yeah.
if you could be the plant manager, you have just reached the pinnacle. That was the guy that the one Mercedes in town that was driving around. That's what that guy had. So that was. And then I get off to college and I see another world, and then I moved
Mm,
to Arizona, and then I was recruited to actually to Chicago to be an Oracle consultant. So I was working in Oracle
mm,
technology, moved to Chicago, and then my world just blew apart even more because I was able to see all these different, I mean, heck, you're working in the Sears Tower or you're working, at one magnificent mile. Then your brain changes, and
mm,
probably a really big project that I had. I was a data architect for Northern Trust, and that's the wealth management division is very large
mm,
within Northern Trust. So I was actually designing data systems for like the Bush family, Wayne Gretzky, Jamie Foxx,
wow.
people like that, and it was fascinating to see how wealth was transferred. And I was still
Mm,
pretty young at the time, probably my late 20s, but to see that how some people made more money than I made in a year by sweeping their accounts overnight and making interest, like
mm.
that's quite a thing to
I was
happen
gonna
in your
say
career.
that's like a whole nother episode for a podcast, I think. Uh, that's insane though. Like, what did that do for you? Did that change? Like, did you the next day just completely be like, all right, I'm no longer gonna accept like
Yeah.
this paycheck type of income. I'm gonna start trying to figure out other ways to make money, or or did that
There's a
take a little bit
little
of
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. I mean, it wasn't quite being a 5-year-old at a Major League Baseball game and I'm gonna be a baseball player, like, it
yeah,
wasn't quite like
yeah.
that, like, "Hey, I'm gonna be George Bush someday or Wayne Gretzky or one of these, ultra wealthy people," but it taught me to think a little bit differently about
Mm,
how money is used. I mean, there was trying to build a data structure that supports artwork next to a 401, not even 401k, they're a bit past that, but like large mutual funds to investments to horses to cars to land, and you
mm,
try to build all that. So I was almost on the technology side and a little bit of that. But one thing it really helped me to do is based on that background, I was able to get my next project with Archipelago, and that was a brilliant group in Chicago that bought the Pacific Stock Exchange. So if
mm.
you remember that movie that Will Smith was in, what was it called? The Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he's sitting on the steps of the Pacific Stock Exchange. That's now shut down. This group in Chicago bought it, And then what they did is they took it all virtual. And that
Mhm.
was one of the first virtual stock exchanges. So I was able to lead some projects there for them, and that they were eventually acquired by the New York Stock Exchange. So I was able to work with Steve Rubinow, the CIO, who became the CIO of New York Stock Exchange. Just all the transactions and all that was pretty exciting, and it's all about these different opportunities that kind of help you level up. And while I was doing that, I also became president of Chicago's Oracle User Group. So I was working with that
Wow.
group, leading that. I even had a meeting at the Sears Tower. So that was kind of a, hey, take a, this may have been before selfies. Hey, mom, look at me at the Sears Tower. I'm leading a meeting. That's pretty cool. Yeah, sixth floor when you're feeling the sway. So that was pretty
Yeah.
fun. But that's where I actually met a gentleman that was with Amley Residential, AMLI, who was just bought by Morgan Stanley Real Estate for 2.5 billion. So Amley was bought by Morgan Stanley, and he was in the meeting, and he said in my Oracle User Group meeting, and hey Eric, we just got acquired. Morgan Stanley wants to use our technology and apply it across their $100 billion assets under management. Would you like to be one of the leaders of the team? So I joined as the president and COO. It's really like a consultative team, and it was kind of an entrepreneur once again. So we were being
Mhm.
consultants within their portfolio projects, and that was my first foray into real estate. So that was,
Mhm.
I guess, my point of that story is it's really just these separate incidents that helped me level up, but it was a lot of it was just me raising my hand. No one said, "Hey, here's a job opening for president of Chicago Orthopedics Group." It was
Yeah.
I went to a couple meetings, I gave a couple of presentations, and the guy pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I'm getting pretty old. I'm getting tired of this. Do you want to lead it?" So I was like the vice president for a year, and then I took it over, and that gave me the opportunity for the next role.
Well, that was a perfect segue of because my question for you was gonna be how the hell did you get into real estate in this world of short-term rentals, but that answered it
Exactly.
perfectly.
Yeah.
So, what was the biggest learning and takeaway in that position? Kind of being an entrepreneur again, did you well, I kind of a part 2
Yeah.
question for that, I guess. Did you recognize that you were an entrepreneur at the time, or did you just see this as a really good opportunity to continue to grow into your professional career and kinda like as another milestone? And then what
Yeah.
was the biggest learning away from that, as you were in that position through the time that you were there?
Right, right. No, great question. I learned that I was still an entrepreneur because I was still risk averse. I
Mhm.
had three young children at the time, three daughters. As I mentioned, they're all in college right now. So that's a different problem to have. But at the time, I had three young daughters. So I was very risk averse. Maybe one was on the way, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, and I grew up from meager background. So I didn't have the family. Oh, hey, dad, could I borrow $1 million to start this business? It wasn't like, or even 10,000. It wasn't
Yeah.
like that. So it's kind of more conservative financially a mindset. So I was still the entrepreneur. So that was a huge opportunity to be able to build a consulting group from the ground up. And that's where it was really helpful because I had to look at financials, even setting up QuickBooks for this small group.
Mhm.
Even though we were within Morgan Stanley Real Estate, we had to go and eat what we kill. We had to
Mhm.
pitch to Safeguard Self Storage became a client, a couple more, all within Morgan Stanley's portfolio. And we were deploying these large ERPs and different things. But another big thing that it taught me is even a big company like Morgan Stanley can get financial and can be in financial trouble. And this was
Mhm.
right around 2006 when I started, or 2007. So then 2008 comes, financial crisis. Everything's whirling down, and
Yeah.
they shut us down. Basically, I had to release most of my team members. They did change our charter so we could sell externally, but that's
Mhm.
when I switched from being an entrepreneur to an entrepreneur, and
Mhm.
that was the big change. Is I had to go out and hustle, and I went back to what I knew, which is I landed a big Oracle contract with the Port of Oakland. So there's seaport, airport, and commercial real estate. So I got that project. Made about I had about 10 million in revenue for that project, but
Wow.
then started doing what I thought would be taken off, which was data warehousing, which I knew in real estate. So
Mhm.
multifamily, did these other projects like Safeguard doing ERP, but I thought, and I called it Yield Vision. I'm going to build software as a service, data warehouse can be awesome. And software as a service was big for me because Mark Benioff, who everyone knows now is CEO of Salesforce. Salesforce
Mhm.
was kind of new back then, and he gave a seminar in Chicago. There was only about 50 of us in the room, so I had like a one-on-one listening to Mark
Yeah.
Benioff. I'm like,
That's crazy.
SaaS, that's the way, recurring revenue, hit it, hit it, hit it. because I've been doing all these consulting projects, and I took some of this, database administration, system administration, kind of fractional usage of something, and apply this to software. Said, wow, there's something here. So the first thing I try to do is create software as a service with data warehousing. The problem was I was asking these real estate companies to spend $250,000 to set up a data
Mhm.
warehouse. They'd say, no way, we're not spending that. Because if you're in real estate, 250 grand or 100 grand, I'll put that in real estate. And then, a couple of years later, and then the rule of that 20x, they're going to get so much more money on the profit there. So they just didn't want to. So
Mhm.
I had about 3 clients there, shut that down. But then I also saw what was the first thing to come out of the recession, or that recession at the time, financial
Yeah.
crisis, was going to be apartments. And that's where people
Mm.
are moving into apartments. Now it's kind of normal, but it was still not as normal. Everyone still had the white picket fence and the 2-car garage. That was still the American dream.
Mm.
Apartments were kind of coming up. So put more money in that, and I found out the biggest spot with little visibility was marketing. They were writing $1,000, $2,000 checks per multifamily property to apartments.com and rent.com, and not knowing why, or if it's working or not. So we started to track every email, every phone call, every click through, and that
Mhm.
was Rent Sentinel, is what that was called. And believe it or not, we found out that the most cost effective site, even for Class A properties, was Craigslist. It was insane.
Wow.
Like, took off. Yeah.
Out of all the sites, Craigslist took
Yeah,
off.
exactly. And we were helping places in, New York City. They were getting $5,000 a month for an apartment, which is a lot at the time. Now it's pretty low, but they were,
Yeah.
"What? Somebody found on Craigslist for 5,000 a month?" Yeah, and we'd put catchy headlines, find this, put in some pop songs or something, get this apartment with the boots with the fur, whatever it is. It's, just have fun with it. And then we did some cool things. We had a group of about 20 stay-at-home military spouses that
Mhm.
would write up content for us and do different things
Wow.
and grab pictures. So it was a really fun project. And then that was my first exit. Sold that company to RealPage, which is
Yeah.
based out of Dallas, Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, and RealPage, I think, is not maybe as popular in the short-term rental world, but they have
Mhm.
their mentions, right? They have
Yeah.
Migo, and they've done some,
Right. They bought
they sold
Ego first.
Kigo. Well, yeah, they sold Kigo now to Guesty,
Yeah,
right? I think Guesty bought
that's
it,
right.
so
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So,
They
they're
kept Migo.
yeah,
Yeah,
they keep their name, mentioned, throughout
yeah.
the year or so every now and
Mhm.
then, but
Sold the Thoma
wow.
Bravo for 10 billion. Yeah, just a
Yeah.
nice little check there. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Sheesh.
Yeah, yeah, so it's good.
So your first exit to
Mhm.
RealPage, what did that do for you personally? Like, did you what I guess not like on a financial mean. I know there's obviously
Yeah.
the financial upside of an
Yep.
exit, but from just mindset to personal like growth, what was the biggest feeling you had? Did you have like a sense of like relief afterwards, or did you feel like you just had to hit the ground running on another project? What
Yeah.
kind of happened in the next phase after that?
It was the latter, hit the ground running, and it wasn't exactly the next project. Next thing was I still hadn't shaken that entrepreneur mindset. I still
Yeah.
felt like, hey, I had to compete, and so I came on to RealPage as a leader of a small group initially, and then
Mhm.
within the first 2 years, I became president of the marketing division. So I took Rent Sentinel and about 5 other companies that they had acquired and merged that and made it more productive as a division called Lease Star. So there's other
Wow.
marketing platforms and built some other components. And I've always wanted to innovate, or I always need to innovate. So I kept on creating new concepts and products, which doesn't always play well in very large corporations, especially an
Yeah.
acquisitive one. So I would really, it's like, what is that? BASF. They say we take great products and make them better. That's
Mhm.
basically what I had to end up doing, and said, okay, I can't innovate as much. I shouldn't innovate as much. Instead, I should take the acquisitions they spent tens of millions of dollars on and make them slightly better, and make a
Mhm.
better client experience. So that's really what I focused on.
And how long did you do that before you ended up going to do your next entrepreneurial journey?
Yes, that was about 2 years, and then I was recruited away by a group in San Antonio. So
Mm.
there was Red McCombs put some money into a fund, and there's a couple of their gentlemen that were mostly in the automotive industry, and they had dipped their toe into the real estate side. And that was that group purchasing but it was really more of it's called E-Supply Systems. They wanted a CEO, and I was always thought that Red McCombs, who's the namesake for the business school at University of Texas, just brilliant guy. So the chance to work with his team was really exciting, and joined them. And I still lived in Chicago, so I could been transferring, traveling back and forth. But it was a platform that, think of like Amazon.com, but for a single apartment building. You're buying your refrigerators and your coffee machines over your, over your shoulder, and
Yeah.
and carpeting and paint and everything else, and you restrict that for your maintenance tech, so it's an easy button, and then
Mhm.
just over and over and over again, and create some major savings. And but there was a lot of fundamental issues with that company when I came in, as far as the structure, and so unfortunately, I had to turn over about 70% of the staff, because that's
Wow.
another theme. I've always made sure I'm always surrounded by really great people that are really, really excited to move forward. So I
Yeah.
was able to get the team aligned, made some lifelong friends there, and made it a profitable entity. But the growth trajectory wasn't there. So I exited that to RealPage as well. Got the investors. That, I mean, it was to the point where might lose everything. So I was able to get it
Mhm.
turned around to get them their money back and then some. And that's, a good way to make friends, is to save them from losing lots of money. Yeah. So that was
Yeah. I was gonna say at the end of the day, they're probably super thankful that you came in and did that because,
yeah, yeah,
there's nothing I can only imagine attending all these board meetings like, man, this company, like I want to believe in it, I invested in it, but man, it's not
right.
really doing its thing. Like, all right.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And me, as a how I communicate, especially even to a board, most especially to a board, I do not pull any punches. I'm always lay it all out. I don't need to sell them on anything. I'm just, this is what it is. That's what I believe. And then, bring them the problem, but also tell them, here's what I'm going to do, the solution. And they were
Mhm.
really responsive to that, which really helped. But
That's awesome.
probably another reason is I had this concept, and it was the vacation industry. Short-term rentals. This is kind of my foray into that. I was at these conferences with my platform, eSupply Systems,
Mhm.
and I heard this gentleman. His name is Jaja Jackson, with Airbnb. Have you ever met
Mhm.
Jaja? Yeah,
I've never met, but
yeah,
I've heard his name mentioned a couple
yeah.
times, so
Just a
definitely.
great guy, Harvard educated, a brilliant, brilliant individual. But he's, and this is a big but, he's at these, multifamily conferences talking about Airbnb, and he's effusive about it. He's so excited. Hey, isn't it awesome that Airbnb just had an announcement this last week about they're back at it? But this was
Yeah.
7, 8 years ago. He's saying,
Yep.
isn't it great that your residents are able to list their apartments on Airbnb? Isn't that
Mhm.
awesome? And they're all saying, no, that's terrible. Like, what are you thinking? Number one, we get no money out of this. Number two, we don't know who's coming and going. Number three, the liability is still on us, and our residents are making money that they're violating their leases, all these bad
Yeah.
things. And it just didn't play well. So he was ostracized. And I watched that happen. And I thought, you know what? There's a better way to do this. So I
Mm.
interviewed a bunch of execs after I exited eSply Systems and talked, well, what do you want? What would be good?
Yeah.
And basically, it's, well, we need better occupancy. It's, better, just like anywhere else. They had vacant
Mhm.
units. And I said, okay, we'll put some furniture in there, work with the court furniture. What else do you need? Oh, we need to make sure that we don't have, bad actors in there. All right,
Yeah.
I'll do background checks. So the partnership with TransUnion did background checks. We don't need to do finance because they pay up front.
Yeah.
And they said, well, what if somebody lights a candle and it burns my apartment down? A building, it's 200 units. And I said, okay, I'll get insurance. So I partnered with Assurant, put together an insurance package. I hadn't met like Rental Guardian or Brady and the Crew yet or any of that, so I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
even know it existed. So did that, and I started to build the platform up, and that became Apartment Jet. And what we didn't know is we built really a rudimentary property management system really quickly. And I remember I was at a corporate housing event, and I saw the flyer for Streamline, and I said, "Oh my God, what? Why did we build this? I could have just used this thing," but but instead we built it from scratch. But we built it in about 6 months. We just cranked it out and syndicate to Verbo and Airbnb, and it was pretty fun.
Well, dang, like I have so many there's so many
Yeah,
directions I can
ask
go with
anything.
this.
Yeah, I won't
Um,
violate my agreements, but yeah, I'll tell you anything.
no. No, no, no. But man, that's super impressive, and I just think, just it I see, like, the combination of the entrepreneur slash entrepreneur, like, as you're talking, just, like, seeing, like, all right, Jaja Jackson, like, getting ostracized in this multifamily event,
Yeah,
And then you're like, well, no, it's a good idea. He's just kind of maybe coming at it the wrong way, or not
exactly.
thinking about like who his audience is and what their concerns are. But at the end of the day, like it's still, and like you know, you said, we talked about it this week on Good Morning Hospitality, but was like,
Mhm.
okay, the apartment spot with Airbnb, it sounds like Nido
Yeah.
all over again, which was a
Yeah,
huge failure of a disaster project for them,
yeah.
um, and for
Did you
everybody
know that
involved.
so Apartment Jet actually was the system behind Nido?
Oh, really? I did not
Yeah.
know that. I
Yep,
did not know
absolutely.
that.
So the
That's
platform
insane.
my team built, we were the back end for Nido because no one else had anything like it. Because we had the
Yeah.
apartment industry. Yeah, yep. So we were powering it. And the concept, there's many reasons that you can read and
Yeah.
for legal and
Yeah.
otherwise, but
Yeah.
we were on the plus side of that. But there's so many things now that are in better shape, such as access control is a big thing. I
Mhm.
mean, Latch was
Mhm.
part of it. Was a big issue if you didn't have that integration.
Yep.
But we had it dialed in. We were able to support them, and then the big thing is the syndication. But with Nido, they would only syndicate to Airbnb because there was so much
Yep.
funding from
Yep.
Airbnb, and that's as we know in our industry in vacation, is that what's that 40%, maybe 50% of your list bookings? How
Mhm.
well are you doing if you're only going with 50%? So among many other items. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I met a lot of Nido hosts, like the tenants that lived there slash that had, and man, they're hustlers, but they had no it wasn't the technology or the um it wasn't that issue. It was the issue of lack of support. Like they were just like, "Hey, we literally are cleaning 5 apartments in one day and we're getting our rents are going above than we ever make. Like we make no money now and we're just
Right.
cleaning for free." Like
Correct.
yeah, and it just became something that was so, yeah, out of hand. So, but outside of that, back to
Mhm.
you in apartment chat.
No, it's fine. It's a
Yeah, no,
fascinating
it's just
topic.
like,
There's been a lot of conversation come my way last week, as you can
well,
imagine.
I can imagine a lot. So with apartment jet, you guys build this infrastructure. You again come in solving solving a problem with a proper solution. All right,
Yep.
what do you need? Furniture, great. What do you need after that? Technology, great. We could do that.
Mhm.
What do you need? Like just hitting all the check boxes that you can.
Yep.
Now, operations are happening. You guys are cranking. Tell us about the acquisition from Expedia Group. So Expedia comes in
Mm.
and right, they came in
Yes.
after how long after you guys were running this business?
18 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was so
Jeez.
fast. Yeah, it was so fast. We were cranking up, and, initially, they came in as, "Wow, you guys are doing some great things. Let's talk about how we can improve the
Mm,
processes there." Mainly because once we set up our Verbo integration, they would see these ADRs that
mhm.
were 180, 200% higher than what they're normally get. We were getting $250 a night because we're in
Yeah,
Austin, we're in Nashville, we're in Chicago, and they're
yeah.
saying, "Wow, look at this. How do we get more of this?" And urban core was really the kind of the hot thing. So they kept on looking at that data, and they said, "Wow, look at it." And then what happens to most groups is, especially when you have your financial analysts going, "What's the total addressable market?" Well, in the
Mhm,
apartment industry, it's 20 million units in the United States. So
mhm.
people can do pretty quick math and go, "Oh my God, look how much opportunity is there."
Yeah.
So they took a look at us, and we were pretty small at the time, obviously, and we were thinking about a fundraise. And when someone comes along and offers you a buyout number that's probably about 2x of what you even thought your next fundraise, exit was, or valuation was going to be, you got to
Yeah.
take it, for the investors. So we were able to get one of my you get a lot of Christmas cards, which is good. But I was able to get a lot of our investors in a little over a year, 3.5x return on their money,
Jeez.
which is unheard of. Yeah.
It's insane to think about, like, especially leading up to it. Like, there's so
Yeah.
many cool stories that you've gotten to experience and hit on. So you I think you took a little bit of a break, right? After Apartment Jet
A little
before
bit.
getting into a little
Yeah.
little
Well,
little
first,
break, like
first
maybe a couple weeks?
Yeah, yeah, a couple weeks exactly. Well, first I went right into when Expedia Group acquired us. Then I
Yeah.
was able to manage. I still had, I don't know. I'm always a guy. I always got something to prove. I don't know until it's like someday be president of the United States. Be like, it's not good enough, whatever.
It's not good.
got to work harder. Why am I not Elon Musk? But but a good way, So I always have a chip in my shoulder. But Expedia Group managed Apartment Jet, but also they acquired a group called Pillow at the same time, which is more focused on that
Yeah.
resident side. So I managed both those groups and created actually a branded division called Expedia Group Multifamily Solutions. So we're trying to bring that whole core. So that was pretty fun, creating a whole division with an Expedia. And then the financial crisis, pandemic hit,
Yeah.
and even that we fought to the bitter end to keep we pivoted our product. We created it was what would we call it, flex, maybe it was alert or something. We created a flexible housing for first responders,
Mm.
flex first. So it was like first, if because you needed nurses and ambulance drivers and first
Yep.
first responders in New York City. So we were
Mhm.
trying to pivot that, but it was just too late for everything. So and new CEO came in, shut things down. So yeah, you're right. I took about a week or two off, and I had been pinged by, and I talked to Inhabit IQ while I was at
Yep.
Inhabit, while I was at Expedia Group, about a leadership role, and timing wasn't right. They were working on investment, and then
Yeah.
so I took a little bit more time, and I was looking at different entrepreneurial things, on my whiteboard at home in my office. Like, this is a cool concept. This is a cool concept, and a bunch of other conversations I had going on. But Inhabit just seemed so enticing to me because it had the residential side, which I'd spent a lot of my career, and it had the vacation side, which is
Mhm.
fascinating. The roll up of Streamline and LiveRes and Blue Tent and all these great groups. I thought, wow, this is great. And the plan is that I would come on board as this chief strategy up. No, is that right? Yeah, chief strategy officer. It's funny, I've already forgot. So I came on in that role. But the plan was within, take over manage the vacation division with Scott. And he was
Mhm.
great, or he is great, and then take over the residential, bring in some leadership there, and then build up, take over the whole company as CEO and take it public. And
Mhm.
then so get in the door, get vacation, and that was fun because, as you know, those are some great companies, great people. Meet like Scott Leggett and like Carlos and all the different, Amber and all these great people in these
Mhm.
different groups. And Scott was outstanding. And get involved in Burma and start writing some checks, getting part of it. We built that right to rent program, which really, really proud of that with the team. A simple solution that's going to give back, and
Mhm.
then started a group, but it just wasn't what I expected it to be. So it's kind of, this is not a fit for me as well.
Yeah.
But on my whiteboard, I still had one of those three things was actually EV charging. Was at
Mhm.
that. So I was at an event. It was a conference, and I met these guys, Lino, like you mentioned, and I had met Lino through different things at different events as well. Good guy, and I think Steve Schwab introduced us, so he's going to take ownership for that.
Oh,
So uh,
always, and he'll probably be
that's
watching, he'll comment on the live stream and say, "Yep, that's damn right I made that."
he will. He probably will. He deserves every bit of it. Yeah. He actually, it's a good story. So we're at Darm in South Carolina, and Steve says, "Hey Eric, let's talk about Streamline. I'm a big client. Let's talk about some things." And I'm, as the leader of all these groups, so I'll meet with one of our largest clients, and he's just a
Yeah.
great guy. So we're chatting, and let's meet at the Starbucks. It was and so it's right in the hotel there. We're sitting there, and let me introduce to these couple guys, and he introduced me to Lino, and Lino's, a very, very, connects with you right away. And
Yeah,
then,
he was
yeah, you guys should connect and have so Steve totally planned it all. Him and Lino had it all choreographed. And it's like, okay, all right, I see what's going on. I didn't know what was going
yeah.
on, but he told me later on.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, coincidentally, this other guy is here as well. You guys should talk." Oh,
Yeah,
weird.
so
Weird
weird.
timing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's
exactly.
such a great story, and I'm literally, as you were telling me the story of, like, Inhabit, I think I had a little bit of a flashback. Were
Okay.
you on stage at the Live Res conference last year,
I was.
in Boise? Yeah,
I
I
was.
remember we shook hands. I was the MC,
That's
and
right.
you came up, and then as you were leaving, like, we shook hands, you passed me the little clicker, and
I
off we
did.
went. I can't
Yeah.
now it like so Vegas wasn't the first time that we met. That was
Wow, that is
actually
crazy. Yeah, and if
that's
you remember,
insane.
I gave Amber the worst high five ever as I walked by
Yeah.
because she was coming up the steps and I was going down, and we were like I don't know, it was so bad.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I do remember that. It's awesome. Yeah,
I do remember Jessica Singer, her and I were on the side of the stage. I was kind of letting Amber introduce you and have you come up and all that.
yeah,
Um, and she was like, "Oh," Jessica was like, you gotta meet Eric. You gotta meet Eric. He's like super big at Inhabit IQ." And like I wasn't unfamiliar with Inhabit, but I wasn't like, "Oh yeah, I totally know who these people are." Like, no
right.
offense. I was like, I have no idea
No,
who
none
Eric
taken.
is, but I was
Yeah,
just like, Okay." And Jessica was like, "No, you need to." And then it was more like, "Okay, well, I'm emceeing. I don't know what I'm really doing. I'm just gonna like
yeah.
go do my job." And
You were the
like,
big deal there.
uh,
Yeah,
no, no, not even close. But then I was just like, okay, now, so as you're telling me the story, I can't believe that was actually the first time
yeah.
we met. So this is
That's
crazy.
cool.
It's like
That is
full circle. But okay, so Steve Schwab, Lino, they do this handoff basically, like, hey,
yep,
meet with us. We're a big client. And then really you got blindsided and got Lino switched in with Steve and all this
yeah,
stuff. So I guess tell me, actually, I have a question before we go.
yeah.
I remember, what does your wife and your daughters think when they see this crazy whiteboard of all these ideas and like just kind of seeing you like go from and
Yeah,
it's not like it's a lot of time, but a couple years and you're doing one thing and then you sell and you exit and you have like all these success pileups, right?
yeah.
So from like a personal standpoint, like what goes on with the family? Like do they fully grasp like holy crap, my dad's kind of a beast, or do they just kind of like, yeah, it's just typical dad just doing his
That's
thing. Like
hilarious. Yeah, it's a great question. As anybody with children knows, children are always grounding. You know,
yeah.
my daughters are not. Oh my goodness, Dad, look how amazing you are. It's usually like,
A little
really, I saw
humbling, huh?
you on, hey, you were on Fox News and you're, business or not Fox Business. I was on there. They're like, your hair looked terrible, Dad. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, I get things like that. It's like,
Oh,
really,
man.
you're speaking that again, but they love the whiteboard, and it's usually, I'll write something up there, and then, one of my daughters will interject like a bullet, buy me a pony or something. It's like, you know, now they're older. It's like, yeah, buy me I won't say, a
Yeah,
bigger car or something. Like, come on now.
yeah. Buy me a
But yeah, they're
Porsche.
they're funny about it. But now they're all at college. It's fun, and I'm kind of a ham as well. So they'll have me on their TikTok or something. Like, come on, Dad, and I'll do the
Yeah, yeah.
dance or something. So I enjoy it. It's good times.
I was
They're good.
I was gonna say, I know we started following each other on Instagram today. Did I see that correctly? You were Gerald from The Witcher, for Halloween?
I
You
was.
were the Witcher? Okay, that was an epic costume. I was like,
Thank
"Holy
you.
crap, this, like, this
Yeah.
legendary CEO, entrepreneur that I'm about to interview literally
Yeah.
has a Witcher wig and costume
Oh yeah.
on his Insta." It was great, it was great. It's good to see that there is
Thank
personality. It's not all business at home.
Oh, I you gotta have fun, otherwise, what's the
Yeah.
point, So I even got the big sword, the double-handled sword and
Yeah,
everything, yeah. I'm a total nerd, which fits my technology, world, so that
it
no
does.
one no one, looks down to you for that, it's good.
It does. Well, I'm kinda curious because, like, so my parents, I was never, like, introduced to entrepreneurial, like, people basically
Mhm,
until, well, actually, it never really clicked until after I got out of basic training for the army and stuff, and, I think I was, like, 20, almost 21, and I was
mhm.
starting to see, like, Uber was the thing. That's when I started my first business. I started, like, a Uber, chauffeur company, um,
Nice.
using the platform, but also, like, creating my own, like, business funnel.
Awesome.
Failed miserably, but never got introduced,
Right.
like, I never grew up watching my parents. My mom has a massage she's a massage therapist on her own company, but, like, she
Mhm.
just to her, it's just work, like, she just does her
Right.
thing. It's not like she's inventing or doing anything, innovative,
Mhm.
but for you as a dad and your kids growing up watching this, and now that
Mhm.
they're fully aware adults, right? Like, they're at college for
Right.
different things and their own humans, how does that, like, do you see that impacting them in a positive way as an entrepreneur? Like, they see, like, if, "Okay, my dad can go do these things, then I can
Mhm.
go do this." Or do you see, like, they just want a normal 9 to 5 type of career path where they're obviously
Mhm.
can scale and grow and develop,
Right.
a business, but they just wanna do their own thing. Do you see, like, any kind of difference from what you've done and what they've seen
I
with.
do, I do. I'll take a step back and talk about the parents first.
Yeah.
My parents were both, the hourly type workers.
Yeah.
My grandfather, both grandfathers were farmers.
Mhm.
So I didn't realize at the time, but farmers are like the ultimate entrepreneur, right? You're doing your numbers, and now it's even more complicated. Do I hedge my corn bets to get my options and my futures and all these different things? So they really were entrepreneurs. They're living check to check, and if there's a storm, it's a rough time. And I was able to watch some of them build wealth over time by building up their land. I guess wealth is
Mhm.
probably not the right term, but you sell this land when you retire, and
Yeah.
that's your nest egg. And I saw by watching my grandparents what they accomplished, and watching my parents what they accomplished by just working hourly. That was awakening for me. And
Mhm.
I'll say my grandparents this much, my parents this much, for hourly. And you're not going to
Yeah.
get you're not going to be happy with life based on that. So that was a good life lesson. My grandfather said something to me early on, and when I was little, he goes, "Well, Eric, if you want to get rich, make money while you sleep." And that was just
Mhm.
one of those. He said a lot of other funny things that I can't repeat on
Yeah.
this podcast, but you know, but
Hey, you never know.
yeah, that's right, exactly. What's this rated? Yeah,
Yeah.
but
We have a
it
mature
was
audience.
yeah, there you go. True, true. Yeah. and but it's so true. If you're only making what you make while you are waking hours, you're not going to reach in but that's fine too. And back to the question of my daughters, of my three girls, one of them is very trying to be more socially, she has the opportunity. Well, as I mentioned, she's at Berkeley Law right now. She graduates in
Yeah.
May, and she's interviewing to do jobs that are she's not going to make massive money and work for the big firms. She wants to
Mhm.
support, and I'm really excited about it because she's telling me about this. She had an internship this last summer with the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau that Elizabeth Warren started, and
Mhm.
she's telling me about boy, maybe I I don't want to violate anything, but there's some bad things
You're good.
happening across the world, and there's people like loaning money and they're keeping the money, and she's fighting the good fight by documenting that, and that's just so amazing to see that. So there's different value, and, and but without, and I'll say this, without my ability and what I've accomplished, she probably wouldn't have the opportunity to do that. And then my middle daughter,
Mhm.
that's a special education major, she's what I love is she's entrepreneurial even in how she's thinking about. She spent a summer with a special needs child, and she was able to use an
Mhm.
app on an iPad so you can communicate and use sign language to do these things. And she's thinking about that. How can I do this entrepreneurial? And then my youngest is
Yeah.
cybersecurity, and she's actually an employee of one of my LLCs called RR1 Ventures, where she has built the website and she's done all these cool things. And she's definitely entrepreneurial, and thinks about how she was doing the shoe game for a while and getting the Nikes and buying for 100 and
Yeah.
sell them for 350 or whatever. So she's
Yeah.
done some of those type of things. So it's all different shades of it, which is pretty exciting to watch.
That's really cool, and the special needs part is really close to my heart. I have a twin brother who has Down syndrome, so,
Oh, there. Okay.
I always love hearing, and he's very high functioning, but,
Oh, perfect.
just seeing, like, there's people that, like,
Yeah.
like, little heartstring is getting tugged on, wanting to
Mhm.
create some useful tools and for that, um,
Yeah.
segment of, like, because there is business opportunities almost
Oh,
any way you look, shape, or form,
absolutely.
um, so it's really cool to see that and hear it, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's gotta be exciting though for you to, like, as a dad, like, you create all this. You had a massive success. I'm sure there's some failure along the way. Like, it's
Oh,
never a
definitely.
perfect, like,
That's not on my
line, right?
LinkedIn. The failures are not on LinkedIn yet.
Yeah, we not trust me, neither is, any of mine. They're all
Right.
hidden in my closet over there.
Mhm.
But, just seeing, like, how that impacts them, they become their own person from it. I think it's gotta be
Mhm.
fulfilling, whether it's like, okay, she's going to be a lawyer. She's going from
Mhm.
Berkeley, but she's not going to become a big firm lawyer. She's going
Right.
to do something that, like, personally, like, fulfills her. Because
Mhm.
I think as entrepreneurs, one thing I think I've seen as a pattern is that we're all very self-aware of ourselves and kind of what's going
Yeah.
around the world with us.
Yep.
And finding, like, I've seen so many entrepreneurs, like, they'll start something, it's not something they're passionate about, and so automatically they're like, why am I doing this? Like, this is not
Right.
fulfilling. It could
Mhm.
be a great sale or it could be a great exit, but am
Right.
I really happy with it?
Yeah.
No. So, like,
Right.
people will walk away from millions of dollars.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I can only imagine like how it is to see your daughters like chase something that's very
Yeah,
personally like fulfilling in that way.
yeah.
Um,
The best
so
feeling.
it's really cool. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
cool.
And now you're talking to my heartstrings because, they're all gonna be back for Christmas here in a couple weeks,
Yeah,
and, I'll pick up one on Thursday, but they're all over the place, so
yeah.
it's gonna be so much fun to have them all back home. I'm gonna love it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's so cool. I love it.
Mhm.
Well, and so back to Lino and Steve Schwab kind of blindside and coming
Yeah,
at you. Tell me about OK to Charge. What was this conversation like?
yeah.
You were already kind of mentioned Habit IQ. You're like, it's great, but it's not really my thing. So you're already
Mhm.
kind of open to the idea probably of a new venture. So
Right.
kind of walk us through it and kind of what you guys are doing at OK to Charge today.
Yeah, so I met them at well, met Lino and everything, but then I saw they had a charger in one of their Be Home 24/7 booths.
Yeah.
And I just said, "What are you guys doing with this thing?" "Oh, it's something we're working on the side. We've been working on it for a while, getting it dialed in." So, well, I've been thinking about this. Tell me more. And the more we talked about it, the more I found out that they had done a lot of this legwork that I had just I knew I would have to do. So
Yeah.
by partnering with them, it basically saved a year's worth of time. And in a way to look at it, it's probably, you know, it'd be like me just getting up to speed of where I am now, and yeah, it's basically a year from now. So
Mhm.
I gained that much time. Where in the EV world right now, there's so many cars coming on board, there's so much opportunity. I think I still have been okay in the vacation industry, but not in multifamily and not in hospitality, say the hotel side. I
Yeah.
needed what they had already accomplished at that point to accomplish what I was envisioning, and fortunately, majority of our vision was aligned, and pretty good guys too. So that was always a good
Yeah.
part. That's always a key thing. I'm sure you're like me. You got to have integrity first. If that's not there, then forget it.
100%.
But
100%.
good guys, and then it did take us a couple months because we're both a bunch of strong alphas in the room trying to figure out how to get our agreement done, and we finally got that across the goal line and then got after it. And I think I started April 4th. I had to stay on at Inhabit to close out one more acquisition. It was a group called Anyone Home. So I had
Mhm.
led, or structured or set up a couple acquisitions, but got that across the goal line. And then I joined formally, and officially with OK2Charge on April 4th. But we start out in vacation, and
Mhm.
I just hit the ground running. I was at the show. I was like, let's get live res set up. Let's get owner res. Let's get guesty
Mhm.
track. I just took off the competitive hat and let's go, because I knew that the secret sauce would be getting that dominant position land grab of I
Yeah.
don't want anyone else to think about another charging solution except for ours. And the
Mhm.
best way to do that is get these property management system integrations because no one else is going to think about it like that in vacation. And these guys were already thinking that way. So that was a great first step is to get that integrated and going. And the reason that is important is so that the right person is charging at the right time.
Mhm.
When you have a couple Teslas in town, and that's all well and good. There's just a couple. When you have 30, 40, 50, 100 Teslas and they find out who has the vacation home with the charger, you're going to become
Mhm.
popular. People are going to stop in. They're going to charge in your lot, whether you like it or not. And that,
Yeah.
or they're staying. We had a client that just bought our chargers at their property in Florida. Their electric bill went up $300. Just what happened? Well, this was even a Tesla charger just going to a normal outlet. It was just
Mm.
all day, full day, just drawing down a charge. That's expensive, so you got
Yeah.
to recover those costs. You don't give free gasoline at your vacation property. So the mindset is there. So that was step one. And now what we're doing is we're continuing to focus on vacation. And it's pretty exciting. You stopped by our balcony. That's where you and I chatted.
Yeah.
Holy
Gosh, that was
God.
so cool. That was so
Yeah.
cool. Like, I was like, "Man, it's a little hidden, right?" Like, yeah, I had to go through, like, 2 doorways to get to you from the Be
Yeah.
Home or yeah, the Be Home 24/7,
Yeah.
booth, but still, like, getting out there, I was like, "This is nice." Like, it
Yeah.
was great weather, great
Yep.
view, and then you had, like, the furniture set up, the
Yeah.
snacks, like, it
Yeah.
it was slick. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Alright, I'm glad Lino's taking me out here." Like, this was refreshing, especially because as you know, as we all do at conferences, have 1 or too many drinks, the night before,
What?
and you're struggling, and,
Yeah.
you're in this room with a lot of people, and you're, like, already hungover, but coming outside, I was like, "Oh, this is refreshing. It was a great like change into the day,
Yeah.
especially yeah, really good location
Love
in
it.
that spot.
Well, that it's a perfect example of kind of the entrepreneurial mindset, right? We were too late to get a booth at Verma
Yeah.
International, and if you're not at Verma International, I mean, good luck to you.
You're not
We
part of the
had to be there,
conversation. Yeah.
and I was
Yeah.
begging, Scott Leggett, calling everybody I could. How can I get in? Miller, everybody. What can I
Yeah.
do? And then finally, they said, "Hey, we kind of got this balcony thing. It was pretty spendy, and what do you want to do with it? I said, how about we create a recharge zone or something? I mean, it fits obviously. And
Yeah.
then, I mean, it was really a blank space. So we had Michelle Beal and the team. We all got together. We put together the furniture, got that all set
Mhm.
up. I mean, it was exciting and get that rocking and rolling. And then shipped a bunch of chargers and set them up. But to have a balcony, and for those listeners that weren't there, it's a balcony at Caesar's Palace. We're overlooking called the Pool of the Gods, just
Mhm.
beautiful, and your point, the weather. We're kind of worried if it's 90 degrees, not going to be fun. So we had a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of a lot of nice things went our way that day.
No, it was great, and so you guys are getting in front of the right people, and I loved because during that conversation, this is
Mhm.
one of my favorite parts of the podcast, by the way. Like, I love getting to share these behind the scenes stories
Oh, good.
with the
Yeah,
listeners because it's not like me just interviewing you. It's like you and I have gotten to know each other a little bit
yeah,
since October.
yeah,
And in that conversation, it was really cool because you were talking about the last mile. You're like, all right,
yeah,
there's this thing called the last mile that I think a lot of in the EV world people forget.
yeah,
And
yes,
so when someone's staying in a vacation rental, they are driving, they're charging along the way, whether it's 350 miles, 100 miles, 50 miles, whatever. They're using their charge, they're charging at stops along the way, but then they get to the vacation home and then they have to drive maybe 3 or 4, maybe 10 minutes away to the next grocery store that's got
right.
a EV center basically. And then they have
Mhm.
to sit there while everyone else is at the vacation home unpacking and getting set up and picking out the bedrooms and doing all the stuff, maybe barbecuing right away.
Yeah,
And you're just sitting there like with your hand, just twiddling
yeah,
your thumbs, kind of like, all
yeah,
right, just gotta charge this freaking car
right,
um, for 20, 30 minutes and then
yeah.
go back. So kind of tell us like your
That's
guys'
if
mission.
there's that's if
Yeah,
there's a DC fast charger, which most places don't. Most vacation
yeah.
areas do not. Otherwise, you're getting some level 2 charger like what we put in, and you're
Mhm.
sitting, you'll leave your car at a Walmart or something overnight,
Yeah.
Terrible.
Which is
Sorry.
not safe. It could, obviously there could be break-ins and all sorts of
Mhm.
stuff that happen with that.
Yeah.
Um, so kind of tell me your guys' mission with OK to Charge and what you guys are really aiming to do. Not only vacation rentals, but obviously it's going to lead into multifamily, into hotels, the whole sphere of hospitality.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So that last mile concept is critical. It's
Mhm.
wherever people park their car and overnight, that's where they expect to charge their cars. You back in the day with internet, you go to internet cafes and get access, download
Yep.
your email or something else. Um, Having an EV charger where you park is going to be just as prevalent as having internet where you live. It'll be
Mm.
just that. It'll be no expectation. But 2035, you can't even have gas cars sold in California and other countries. 2025, which is right on the door, Hertz is going to have
Yeah.
25% of their cars be electric. Hertz drivers are going to your vacation properties and they want to
Yeah.
charge their car. They don't want to drop
I'm
it off. And yeah, there
I'm
you
one of
go.
them. I'm a
You're
gold
one of
member
them.
with Hertz, so heck
Is
yeah.
that right?
I'll be
There
yeah,
we go. Yeah, you're like,
you
okay,
have
you
to.
get the Tesla 3. You're like, sweet, I got a Tesla 3. I use my AC, I use my heaters and everything else. And
Yep.
now I'm at a third of the charge left. And what do I do? And I don't know where anything's close. No, it's going to ruin your vacation. So
Mhm.
you have to have that. And what's going to happen as well? Brooke just posted this from Ventry this morning. He went
I
from
saw it.
4,000 properties he's competing with to four because he had a charger and Airbnb in their wisdom in their San Francisco base. So thinking about this, EV is one of the drop downs, right?
Yep.
So that's key. Booking.com's there. Idris Elba is on a commercial, which I forwarded to the Verbo team, by the way. I was like, hey guys, come on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they need to have that in the drop down. They'll get that. Tim and the team will have that soon. But it's in the amenities. So that's already amenities section. And then we talked to Beyond and they ran an analysis and they were able to verify that by having an EV charger in the US, 12.8% uplift on your ADR just by having an EV charger, and that's not us. That's Beyond saying that. So all the data points, and then where we're going next, we're building reservations for multifamily, idle fees. so that you can have, and also resorts. So we're at Snowshoe. We're at another Costco property in Mexico that's doing
Mm.
great. People are pulling in, charging up their car. We have a
Yeah,
different model for that where they pay by the kilowatt hour versus paying by the day, like a spot day and stay.
for
And
sure.
then on the multifamily, in addition, we have idle fees. So if someone parks their car, charges it, leaves it too long, hey, these things need to churn. So get your car. We send them a text message and move on. And then something big we're doing in single family is time of use, and this is where like the next level. So first off, just getting the car charged, but time of use is where the electrical grid is time of day. If it's between 4 and 8 p.m., maybe that's peak hours. It's going to cost you 30 cents a kilowatt hour, but maybe after midnight it's 2 cents a kilowatt hour. So we
Mm.
can do is in our software, and we already have this live. You can actually charge trickle, trickle, trickle. Comes midnight, boom, charge up your car where it's the cost is least effective, and now you're doing something right for the grid. It's saving you money, all these great things, and you do it while you sleep. Once again, so it's
Well,
critical. Yeah,
dynamic pricing for EV charging is what it sounds
you
like.
got it.
Yeah,
You got
yeah.
it. Yeah, and that's just the
Uh,
beginning. So it's, and I throw my electrical engineer hat, and I can geek out. There's something called vehicle to grid. You've probably seen this with the Ford Lightning, where they can power the house,
mm,
and Porsche Taycan, and a lot of the cars are going to have this. Chargers will have it here in the next year or so. Um, but that's where the battery of your car becomes part of your grid for your
mhm.
home. So if you have a solar panel or something else, you're going to charge up your car, and then your car will be able to push power back in your house. And now you're going to have all these hand shaking back and forth. So it's the next 5 years are going to be really exciting.
Yeah, it's crazy this, like, there's just so much that goes into, like, I always talk about anticipation of the guest needs, right? We're always talking about how do we anticipate what the guests are gonna need, and
Right.
how do you stick out above the competition, and as you kind of showed, Airbnb is creating this, like, category search
Right.
vehicle where it's really not like people aren't booking their stays by the destination itself, like, "Oh, I wanna stay in North Carolina." They're actually staying by a criteria of, like, 1, is this property Instagrammable? Am I gonna be able to show this off to my friends, and is it a cool
Right.
experience, right?
Mhm.
So then
Yep.
also, is it checking off the wow factors of, the
Absolutely.
amenities, the hot tub, the EV charging,
Yep.
the simple, like, check-in instructions, like, which should be basic now, like, that should be
Yeah.
like, anyone thinking about getting on Airbnb or short-term rentals, you have to have a smart lock, like, it's just
Right.
no
Exactly.
questions asked.
Yep.
Um, so all the stuff, and I think, the EV charging one, as much as there is hype around Tesla and Rivian and all these other kind of companies that are going all electric,
Right.
our space is always like hospitality in general, like hotels,
Yes.
multifamily, we're always kind of behind the 8 ball when it comes to innovation in the overall consumer world, right?
Right.
So to see that this is like, I don't know, before meeting you and before getting introduced and kind of hearing more of the story from Lino and Travis and all this, in my head, I wasn't even thinking of EV as being a big thing.
No. Yeah.
Because I don't drive EV cars. I don't have a car here in Denver, but um, just not part of my life. But then hearing like, okay, like from a business standpoint, from a management company, from an owner, from
Yes.
the industry as a whole, like, okay, 12.5% increase in ADR, like
Right.
that's nice. That's nice,
Yeah.
especially in this economy. Like
Real. Exactly.
that's real money in your pocket. So, and thinking of like, I always mess up the word ancillary revenue, but like in-stay
Yeah.
revenue, right? Like being able
Yes.
to have another source that you're not having to split with the owner. Um,
Correct.
you know, that could
Yep.
be another big perk.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, no, getting like I know we only covered OK to Charge like right at the end of this podcast, but
Yeah, yeah, I'm
it's
doing
just
a
like
terrible job as CEO.
no, it's great. I think your story leading up to all this, like it helps. I think anyone who's listening right now, if you gotten to this point, we're at an hour and 15 minutes as we're recording, is like
Yeah,
okay, if you got to this point, then you understand why this makes sense. Because, like you said earlier in the episode, right time with the right people, doing the
yes.
right thing. I think that's a huge piece. If this happened
Yeah,
2 years ago, do you
yep.
think the success would have been there? Maybe, maybe
No,
not. It could. Yeah. So,
it
yeah.
wasn't the demand.
Mhm.
It's I don't know, it's like having the iPhone too soon and not enough people, were interested in it, or maybe the iPhone
Mhm.
created demand. Bad analogy,
Yeah.
but yeah, there were not enough electric cars in the road, and now it's reached that tipping point. There's actually in the innovator's dilemma, you look at from the bleeding edge, now there's kind of early adopters. We've moved into the early adopters phase. So once you get 5% penetration of any product, that's when you're off of the bleeding edge. So now we've surpassed that in the US.
Mm.
Other countries are already there, and that's the other part.
Yeah.
Norway just crossed the point where you have more miles driven electric than gas in Norway.
Wow.
And you see
Wow.
different countries that are well ahead of the US, and we're catching up. So there's validity on multiple fronts, and then you see the
Mhm.
tsunami of opportunity coming. So that's where we're getting ahead of it. And then kind of the most important thing though, and you mentioned, it's that consumer experience. It
Yeah.
has to be the easy button. And if there's anything I learned, whether it was in multifamily or in vacation, property managers do not need one more thing to do. It has to be
Nope.
simple, 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 simple. That's why we integrate. Everything flows through. We send the email, we collect the money, we turn it on for them. Just no more work for you. It's
Mm.
got to keep it that way.
So to help wrap up this episode, because I
Mm,
know I don't know if you have another meeting or anything, but um, for you guys in this team, what's
yes.
next? What does 2023 look like for you as a CEO, as a
Mm,
company? Is it more integrations? Is it starting to move into multifamily? What's your guys'
yeah.
big push?
Yeah. Number one thing still is growth in the vacation sector. This was our coming out party this year.
Yeah,
Everyone should kind of know about us. Now it's here's the numbers, here's the value prop. Let's not just get, 10 chargers in Costco. Let's get 100 or 400. Let's not get the same thing I
yeah,
trip. The cost, you name it, we'll get there and everyone in between,
yep.
getting just chargers out there and getting the education for as many people as need it. But yes,
Mhm.
expanding the multifamily. We have some trials going right now, going outstanding. And then also hospitality and hotels. We're going to announce here shortly. I'm probably ahead of myself, but Oracle Hospitality. It's
Mhm.
Opera. So we're going to be
Yep.
announcing that here shortly, and having some very strategic conversations with some very large hotel players. And as you can imagine, you pull up to a hotel. If I'm integrated their property management system, I say, okay, Will is staying at this hotel, Marriott, and he's already
Yep.
approved. And otherwise, it's pretty popular parking lot for
Yeah.
chargers. And
Yeah.
so now we're going to say, no, only guests of this property. No one else can do that. We're the only ones that
Mhm.
can. So we're going to be so
Mhm.
far ahead of the curve, and we're just going to grow in that space. So it's going to be hotels, multifamily, but solidify ourselves in vacation as well.
I love it.
Pretty excited.
I love it.
Yeah.
Super exciting. As
Yeah.
a Marriott Bonvoy member myself, I can't wait
There you go.
for when I'm
Yeah.
renting my Hertz car rental car to go plug it in and
I am
and
not
make it
going to
all.
rest until I was literally, what you described is literally a conversation I had yesterday. I was saying, you need to have your Bonvoy app. You look at it, there's your EV charging. You click on it. Yep, I'm charged. Just like you open your door automatically, just
Yep.
whoever sold them those locks, congratulations, way to go. I gonna be the guy that sells them the EV chargers. Put your Bonvoy app, go inside. Whether that goes extra charge or onto your folio, that's
Yeah.
up for a process, but I'm gonna make it happen.
I love it. And
My team's
I'm
gonna
gonna
make
hold
it
you to
happen.
it. I'm gonna hold you to it though. Like we're gonna save
Good,
this clip and we're gonna come
good.
back in a year and be like, all right, did
Right.
you make it
I
happen?
like it. I love it.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Eric, I seriously loved this conversation. This is the best way to start my mornings.
Okay, good.
Hopping into a podcast and chatting with smart people like you and just hearing your
Appreciate it.
story. It's really inspiring. And I just want to ask for anyone who's listening right now, what if you had one link to put in the show notes and to have them follow, whether it's OK2Charge.com or your LinkedIn or whatever, or it could be anything that's inspired you in the past. So if you had one link to send them, what would it be?
Oh, just one link.
One
Well,
link. Well,
selfishly,
obviously
it's
include everything, but
yeah,
yeah,
follow me on LinkedIn, and then connect with LinkedIn Eric Broughton. Follow, and then of course follow OK to Charge. My favorite book and a person that I just really value and have a lot of my mind share as far as how I manage is Ray Dalio. The book is called
yeah,
Principles, and I think it just is a brilliant way. Whether it's this concept of radical transparency for your teams, or giving validity to everyone has great ideas, but the person at the table that has the most validity to their idea, they get a weighting to that.
mm,
So there's just a lot of concepts that I would highly recommend the book Principles by Ray Dalio.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much, Eric, for being on the show today. And for all
Thank
of you
you.
slick talkers who are watching, listening, all the above, make sure you like and subscribe to everything OK to Charge, Eric Broughton, you name it, anything that we covered in this episode. Make sure you're showing the love, because there's quite a few of you out there that do tune into the show. So we appreciate every single one of you, and we'll see you all again next week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.